Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Cyber Revolution podcast. Thanks for joining us yet again. I'm Adam Hewitt, the CEO of Cyber Revolution. Today, I'm joined by a superstar student of ours, Daren Nair. Daren, how you going?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No, mate, thanks for joining. Daren has just finished his studies. He's currently gone through all of his certifications and he's just about to start his job placement services and start applying for some cybersecurity roles. So I thought it would be really cool. It's a bit of a different perspective. Typically, we have on the show students that we've successfully placed or people that are working in the industry. And I was just saying to Daren off air before that it's a really cool, unique perspective to basically have someone come on and just talk about why they were successful in their studies, give out some little insights and tips as to why they felt that they really enjoyed the studies. And I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast are our current students. So if you are, this is going to be a perfect podcast for you on how to be successful throughout your studies as a Cyber Revolution student. Before we get into all of that, I want to give our new listeners of the podcast a bit of an overview of who the podcast is for and who Cyber Revolution are. So Cyber Revolution, we are Australia's only dedicated cybersecurity training and placement institute. We specialize in finding people their first job in cybersecurity. And now over the years, we've been able to help hundreds and hundreds of people successfully get into cybersecurity, but we're still, to this day, finding a lot of questions being asked of us around what is cybersecurity, what is an entry-level role, what are the certificates I need to do, how do I go about getting into this industry? Okay, so the reason that we built this podcast and we do this podcast on a regular basis is to really break down some of the misconceptions about cybersecurity and just educate people on how they can land their first job in the industry. So if that resonates, that sounds interesting, then this is the podcast for you. All right, Daren, let's get into it.
All right.
Let's start from the very beginning, where I do with all of our guests. Walk us through what you were doing for work, or what you're currently doing for work even, before you decided to start this journey, embark on this journey and learn some new skills in cybersecurity and change careers.
Yeah, so I'm a TV producer. I've been a TV producer for pretty much my whole career for about 15 or 16 years. And it's sometimes as exciting and interesting as it sounds, and sometimes it's quite boring and monotonous. But it's taught me a lot, and I've made good money, and I've built some good skills, and I guess met some really great people, interesting people, lifelong friends. But I kind of got to a point where I felt like I needed a bit of a change and a different challenge, and so here I am on the transitioning journey.
And was there any kind of, because a lot of our students, they'll come on the show and they'll be like, there was a specific moment where I decided not only did I want to change careers, but I wanted to get into cybersecurity specifically. Like they could have been hacked themselves or one of their parents were hacked and they're like, I want to get back at the bad guys. Like for you, why cyber?
Why cyber? For me, it was actually, I think cyber allows me to combine a bunch of different skills that I've been collecting over the years in TV and project management. It allows me to combine a bunch of those with some interests that I have that I don't get to fully explore in TV producing and kind of technical producing.
Yeah, great. So you got some project management skills, which obviously is very relevant to the IT and cyber sector. That's what I bang on about all the time in this podcast. You probably have heard it. Transferable skills. That is the number one thing. Like the reason that we help career changers, more so 80%, 90% of our student cohort are career changers. We don't typically help school leavers or university leavers all that much because your strengths are the skills that you've already got, you built up over time. So can you run us through quickly, like what potentially was some of those transferable skills, if you've got any real specific ones that you've done previously?
Yes. Yeah, and I'm just to clarify, I'm like bang in that demographic of transferable skills. I've got some background experience and other things, So in terms of transferable skills, project management is definitely one of them. I'm no stranger to rack rooms, server rooms, storage closets, running cables, setting up computers, servers, that kind of thing. Not super in depth, but I definitely know my way around those things. But I'm not an engineer by any means. but those skills are definitely I found are very transferable. And just being not afraid of technology. We've all met people that just are allergic to technology and it just do not want to learn even the most basic things. Uh, I'm just not one of those, and so that also helps that it's not daunting to learn new technology.
I'm glad you said that. That is a massive one. Like, because I said at the start of this the introduction of this podcast, break down some of the common misconceptions. A lot of people think that cybersecurity, I've got to be like a programming and coding genius or a tech whiz to get into it. Now, whilst there is one small aspect of the cybersecurity space, if you break it down, there's not the skills that you need to get into an entry level role. So often people can just completely throw out the idea of changing careers into cybersecurity because they are not techie people, or they're not, they don't think that they can learn the new skills. And the fact of the matter is, it is a new skill. No one was born a cybersecurity.
Yeah, that's something that you say a lot, and it really resonated with me when I was learning the other stuff. And I kept that in mind when the studies were a bit daunting, or I was ready to go. Oh, what's the point? I was just thinking, nobody. It's true. Nobody is actually born a cybersecurity expert, and it does take something to learn these things. But you need to be open to it, right, and have that right mindset.
I really want to dive a little bit deeper into some of those moments where you felt like, this is too much, I'm going to give up. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because every single person goes through that. You're a career changer. So you're working, and then you've also got to study as well. So there's moments where you don't feel like doing it. And I want to have a chat about that. Before we do, like, how did you come across us? How did you come across Cyber Revolution, and why did you decide to join us as opposed to any other training provider?
Yeah, so how I came across you guys, I was Googling some stuff, I was researching, and your little face popped up in an ad. I can't remember where. Maybe it was on my phone, something. And it's one of those things where I didn't think much of it initially, but it popped up a few times, and the algorithm worked its magic, and it eventually kind of got me to think, oh, okay, I'll have a look into these guys and what they're about. And so that's how I kind of came across you guys. What was the other part of the question, sorry?
I guess, why you decided to join us as opposed to there's a bunch of other opportunities and training providers out there.
Yeah. So I think what I liked about you guys was I had an initial phone call with one of your team members, just to qualify me and make sure I was a right fit and stuff. And what I liked about what he said was, he didn't sugarcoat it. He said, it's going to take some time and effort and commitment. And having been around the block a few times, I know that that's true, and that he was being honest, which I liked. And it actually did really have me sit down for a couple of weeks after that call and think, okay, do I really want to change my life? Not massively, but enough that it's going to affect parts of my life. The study, having to pay the money, make the commitment, make the time commitment, all that kind of stuff. I really had to think about it for a couple of weeks, and ultimately decided to go with you guys because of that. I don't remember his name, but one of your team members, Lachlan. So just his honesty and the fact that you guys had also, what I liked was you just packaged it all up, so it took a lot of the thinking and guesswork out. So for me, once I decided that I could trust you guys and you guys knew what you were talking about, I was like, okay, let's just go with Cyber Revolution, because you guys will give me the framework and the support, and I just need to put my head down and just do it. Right?
Just do it. Yes. Yep. Which is a big part of it, and you've done that. So well done, mate. I know that it sounds simple when you put it like that, but it requires a lot of effort and dedication. And shout out to Lachlan too. Lachlan is an unbelievable career consultant here. He's still with us. He's been with us for a couple of years now. And I think he's pretty straight down the line when he lets our potential candidates, when they come to us and have a chat, whether he thinks, cybersecurity is going to be a good fit for them or not. And he's pretty straight down the line. So it seems like you appreciated that. Amazing. Okay. So you finished your studies. You've been really dedicated. I asked your student support officer, Catherine, actually, because Catherine's your support officer. I know you'd spoken to Lachlan previously. Yep. You've also had sessions with Jason, one of our student mentors, to help prepare you.
Jason is awesome. I love that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have a quick chat about your experience with Jason as well, because he's a huge asset to our students. But I I've spoken to the team. Obviously, we know why you were successful, but do you actually know? Have you reflected on that and gone, why was it that, I've been able to, learn these amazing skills and push through in times that sometimes I felt like maybe giving up?
Yeah. Um, Look, I can only guess at why I was successful. I think one of them is I did really commit to it and put a lot of time aside to focus on the study. Um, and I got to a point where I didn't take. I usually do contract work, right? So I didn't take my next contract. I purposely said no to an income so I could focus on this, right? And it was kind of that. It's kind of that burn the boats kind of mentality of like, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to get it done, and we need to get it done quickly, or in a timely fashion. Um, because there's a reason, and there was a bit of I guess, a real drive there for me to get this done because I don't like to lose money,
Yeah.
and so so I was like, okay, well, I'm not getting an income. I need to get this done quickly and move on. So I purposely kind of put that scenario in place to really push me ahead. Um, and yeah, also the other thing was just, making sure I used all the resources that were available that Cyber Revolution provided, that's available on the internet. I just kind of grabbed everything I could.
Amazing. So one of those major resources being Catherine and Jason. Let's have a quick chat about Catherine, your student support officer.
Yeah.
How did that, just explain to the people listening in how that partnership worked with your dedicated support officer and how you best utilized her to get success?
Yeah. So the great thing about Catherine was we would have regular weekly calls. Um, and so what was useful about that is that it keeps you on track, right? So if you've got a busy life, if you got family, if you're working full time and other things, having that weekly call, knowing that it's coming, and that they're going to ask you, your support officer will ask you what you've done for the week. Have you gotten through how much you were meant to, and et cetera, et cetera. Just having someone keep you accountable and ask those kinds of questions is on its own quite helpful. Um, Catherine was particularly helpful for me in that I like to learn in different ways. Some people, like to read. Some people like to watch videos. Some people like to listen to things, whatever. And so for me, some of the videos were helpful, some of them weren't. But when I went to Catherine, she was giving me other kind of books, other resources online. And I think that made a huge difference for me because I was getting a bit frustrated with some of the videos. But then when all these other resources Catherine made available, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is actually working a lot better for me. And then I kind of established. I realized early on what works for me, and then Catherine was able to feed me that material throughout the journey, and that actually really sped things up.
Amazing. And that's a big skill that the support officers have, right? Everyone learns differently,
Mm,
whether it's online lectures, whether it's textbooks, whether it's live practice labs, whether it's
mm,
the practice exams. Not everyone is going to use 100% of everything. It's about curating your own program within what we do here.
yeah,
And that's what the support officers do for our students, right?
yeah,
Make sure that they're using the right resources at the right time. And then also keeping them accountable. Were there ever any moments where, and I probably think that Catherine may not have done this because she's just so empathetic and nice, but were there any moments where Catherine was like, hey, uh, you haven't done this, because a lot of people do need sometimes a little bit of a kick up the backside if they're not doing it. Were there any of those moments?
yeah. With Catherine, no. And you're right; she's very empathetic, right? So, I think that's probably the other good thing that I realize is that people respond to different things, right? So with Catherine, what I liked was that she was empathetic because I'm quite harsh on myself. So if I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, then I get quite down on myself about that, right? And so what was good about Catherine was she was able to she was able to offset that and give me encouragement and was quite good with me actually. So in that sense, that worked really well.
Yeah, great. Because there can be times where you're like, oh, I didn't do study this week. And then that negative effect can have a domino effect and go to the
Yeah,
next week. Oh, I'm not going to do this again. And then
yeah,
2 weeks pass and you're like, oh, I'm useless. I'm just not going to do it anymore. So you
yeah,
need someone to go, hey, it's only 2 weeks. It's all good. Like,
yeah.
we've got a year here to get it done, and kind of lift your spirits a bit. So that's amazing. That accountability is really, really important. Okay, perfect. So that's the support. Jason, let's have a quick chat about him. So Jason is one of our student mentors. He's done the certifications, and he essentially runs small group sessions and also some one-on-one sessions to prepare people for the exams, which can be a little bit of a nervous, a nervous moment leading up to your first exam or even any exam, really. So how did that go?
Yeah, Jason's invaluable, as you know. He's someone, especially early on with the first couple of tests where everything's very new. I did all the tests online, so I've never done that before with an online proctor. So for him to be able to step me through that process of how it's going to work, what the issues are, the strategies around doing these tests, then he walked me through with a bunch of other students some practice practice questions, how to break them down, how to interpret them, that kind of stuff is invaluable. It just gives you a little bit of confidence going into these tests, just knowing what to expect.
Yep. Yeah. We've got an extremely structured, rigid process to make sure our students are prepared. We kind of over prepare them with
Yeah,
practice exams, multiple practice exams, practice questions. We're actually developing more internal resources. We're always trying to get better results for the students. Our pass rates are, extremely high. It's around the 93-94% mark. But I think rather than increasing the pass rates with the high, we want to try and just increase students' confidence going into an exam. That's the big thing. Because in your first exam, you have no idea whether this process is going to work. You start doubting, have I done enough study? Have I overstudied? Have I just memorized these questions? And do I actually know the concepts or do I just know the content? All of these doubts start to creep in. And so the big thing here at Cyber Revolution, we're constantly iterating and kind of changing our curriculum, building on it to make sure that our students just feel confident going into those exams. And Jason's a big part of that. So shout out to Jason and Catherine. I know they're listening to these episodes. Amazing. Okay. And so, you did come into this with, as you said, a little bit of like, you were in the space, you had a little bit of IT kind of knowledge, but no like huge formal certifications or degrees
no,
or anything.
no.
And you kind of did answer this question already at the start, actually, but you weren't nervous at all about taking the leap and changing careers and starting, to learn these new skills, or they're a
Uh,
little bit of nerves.
I wa- I wasn't that part of it excited me to learn new skills. Um, and what I found was as I learned stuff, the stuff I was learning that was cybersecurity specific was filling in gaps of knowledge that I had before, like in IT. So there's certain things I knew to do in IT, but I didn't know why. It was just something that I knew to do. And so as I learned the cybersecurity stuff, I kind of was filling in those gaps. So that was quite interesting, and I actually really liked that part of it. What I did find nerve wracking is going into interviews and approaching potential employers about to discuss skills that I don't have any actual experience in yet. That's the part that can be a bit nerve wracking. Having to be honest with potential employers, saying, "Look, these are my transferable skills that I've done a million times, and then there's X, Y, and Z things that I haven't done before, but I understand them conceptually."
Yeah. And that's the most important thing. Like we train our students to focus on what they do have, not on what they don't have.
Mm.
But it's also very important to put your hand up. Very important for people listening in, either you're a student of Cyber Revolution or you're going through interview processes now for your first job. The people that are interviewing you will know, they will sniff out whether you can or can't do something that you're saying you potentially might, you might be able to do it. You can't. They'll sniff that out a mile away. And that will almost instantly put a red line through your name. If you're going to say you can do something, they'll find out you can't. And, there goes your opportunity. On the flip side of that, what they will absolutely love is someone who is comfortable within their own skin in any environment to put their hand up and say, "Hey, I don't know this. First time I've heard about it. Tell me more. I'm willing to learn. I'd love to learn about it." That is crucial. So if you have that mindset, focus on what you do have, these transferable skills, tailor your application towards that, and then also have have the confidence in yourself to go, "Hey, I don't know that, but I'd love to learn more about it." That's one of my key attributes is I'm a lifelong learner.
Yeah,
Cool. But you're about to go through that whole process.
yeah, and I just wanted to add to that quickly because a lot of people that are in part of Cyber Revolution or potentially joining will be like me, right? There'll be people who have some form of career and they're transitioning, and it can be quite a humbling experience. I find it very humbling to be an almost subject matter expert in broadcast television and post production, almost 2 decades of experience, and then be in job interviews where I'm putting my hand up saying, "Look, I don't know that." Um, for a 36-year-old, that's quite tough, right? But it's also, like you said, authenticity really does come through. If you're genuinely just honest that you can't do something, but that you're willing to learn, or that you are genuinely interested in learning about it, it's much better to do that, because no matter how good a liar you are, at some point you will be found out, and it's not worth it. You're better off just being honest.
And the outcomes of you saying you can do something and not being able to deliver on that,
Yeah.
can be pretty dire when it comes to cybersecurity, right?
Yes.
Not only will you get found out, but there could be massive detrimental effects there to businesses. So you don't want to be doing that, okay, people? Um,
Yeah.
that's cool. So you're going from, as you said, industry expert, subject matter expert for 20 years. And now starting out, you're still young, 36, you said before. I'm hoping still young because I'm almost there as well. Is you've still got decades of work left in you.
Yeah.
Are you kind of excited? Like, you're going to get into this new industry? Is that what you want to do? Do you want to become a subject matter expert in the cyberspace now?
Yeah, so my two goals, it's still early on as you say, but my two goals in this industry for the rest of my career is to be either like a security architect, so someone who really from top level designs security architecture and frameworks, or to go into consulting, to be a subject matter expert and be a consultant for companies around the world, hopefully, um, delivering my expertise in a particular area.
Cool. So two different pathways there. You've got the more technical pathway, the more consulting pathway.
Yeah. Yep, and it's interesting
Interesting.
that I've kind of gone into those directions because that's very similar to what I do in TV and broadcast. I do a lot of technical stuff, but then I do a
Yep.
lot of strategy and big picture stuff as well. And
Yep.
so I'm taking that approach and applying it to
Okay.
cybersecurity.
We want to narrow down on those, which pathway you want to go down, and that'll be the next stage when you go through the job ready program. Is try pick one.
Mhm,
Is our biggest bit of advice, because you want to pick one, and then you want to go into that interview and that application with it fully tailored for that specific outcome,
mhm.
and focused, on that one specific pathway. So that's the next, I guess, the next lesson and the next journey for you is to do that.
Yep.
Uh, okay, amazing. Wow, we're almost already 20 odd minutes in to the
Oh,
podcast,
dear.
which is around when we usually like to wrap it up. Wow, it's flew.
Just how we just started.
It does, doesn't it? Um, Amazing. Okay, so we've already given a bunch of tips and tricks, obviously, as to why you're successful. That's a huge part of this, why we're doing this podcast, and it's a little bit of a different perspective, which I love. What would be your top 3 tips for somebody if they're thinking about getting into cybersecurity, or could even be in the program at the moment, or could be studying cybersecurity with any other organization, whatever it is? What would be your top 3 tips for somebody to be successful within their studies of
Yeah.
cybersecurity?
I would say the first thing for me is just just being really clear on why you're doing it. Um, we've kind of covered this before, but to kind of summarize it a little bit, it's you need to be sure why you're doing it. And you need to be really clear about that, because there will be times when you really just couldn't be bothered, or you just don't want to do it, or you're ready to give up. The other day I'd applied for like 30 something jobs in a week, and I hadn't got a response. And I was just like, what's the point? Um, and so there'll be times like that throughout your journey, and your reason for doing this, your why needs to have enough emotional charge with you, that it gets you through. It's the same for anything, right? But for this, that's really important, and so that's why for me, I took at least 2 weeks, I think, to really think about this, before I committed. I've been thinking about it for months and months and months, but I took 2 weeks to really kind of ask all my friends and family, ask myself, write down a pros and cons list, and then I was like, okay, I'm doing this, and, and that reason, that why, actually has got me this far. Yeah.
Great. So major tip number 1, find your reason why. Any other tips?
Yeah. So the other one I would say is so be consistent and be persistent. The two things that have always been at the forefront of my mind throughout this journey. So, like consistent, for example, with your studies, come up with a plan to make sure that you can sustainably and consistently study. Um, Also, that applies to me now in the job kind of application process is just being consistent. Because looking for a job is a job in itself. So being consistent with that, applying for X number of jobs a day, and refining your CV, refining your cover letter. I'm about to do another job interview tomorrow, and so being consistent with my preparation for those interviews, and consistently refining my stories and talking points.
Learning from them, right? As you said, I know you've had a couple of interviews. Use that. As a lot of people don't like to apply for roles, like, I'm not a chance of getting it. But if you even get through to the interview stage, right, you're learning about that process and you can implement those learnings to the next one.
The biggest thing I learned when preparing for my last interview is that when I actually sat down and broke down each line of the job description, I actually realized there's a whole bunch of stuff in my CV that are security related that I haven't put in because I hadn't thought hard enough about the tasks I'd done every day for the last 15 years. Because that prep really forced me to break down my day and what is security related. That in itself was invaluable. I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah. Big tip, big tip. And tip number 3?
So the other thing was I'm someone who doesn't always tell my friends and family like what I'm up to, like with certain things, right? So like with this cybersecurity thing, everyone knew me as someone who works in TV. I'm a TV producer. Has known me as that for a long time. So in the beginning, I was quite afraid to tell my friends and family this because I didn't want to. I don't know. I actually don't know why, but I was because it's part of my identity, right? Being a TV producer and a technical producer and all this is part of my identity, and so to do something completely different, I just felt it was a bit weird. But what I realized was that by telling people and like sharing what I'm doing, actually helped keep me accountable and keep me on track. Because as soon as I said that to everyone was asking every time I'd catch up with friends or family, whatever, they would ask me about it, and it would help motivate me too. If I'd have done it the way I normally do things and just keep things to myself and not share with people, I think it would have been a lot harder. So be vocal and be willing to share. And there's other people that want to do this or take some other courageous step in their life, and by you sharing it, it empowers other people as well. So I found that
100%. That is a big one. And actually, the last podcast I shot a podcast last week with a student, Ross Chewton, which will come out before this podcast. And so you'll be able to hear in one of his experiences. He started his studies. A month into his studies, he had a chat through someone, I think, at his church. He said, "Look, I'm studying this new thing, cybersecurity." A couple of weeks later, he landed a job at Gallagher's Insurance in a entry-level cybersecurity role. And he'd been working in that industry for 11 months, and I just interviewed him last week. So he got a complete career changer, changed careers, got a job, luckily enough, at a great company a month into his studies. And for the past 11 months, he's been doing study and work in cybersecurity. So he's been very busy. He's just finished his studies, so it gave him time to do the podcast. And we talk about, and he was very big on the fact of letting people know within your inner network, not shoving it down their throats and screaming it from the rooftops all the time, but when the opportunity arises, let people know that you are doing this and these are the opportunities you are looking for, because you never know where that conversation can lead you.
I was very surprised. I think most people are 2 or 3 degrees of separation away from someone who works in the field.
Yep.
I found
Yep.
that. I had no idea. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. So that's a big takeaway. Unbelievable, man. I really, really appreciate your time coming on the show, explaining your journey. I think it is invaluable for people that are actually currently studying or even thinking about studying and wondering what the journey looks like.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people have gotten a lot of value out of it, mate. So I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem at all. Guys, if you did enjoy this episode, please comment, like, subscribe, leave us a good review. And if you want to know a little bit more about the job placement program that we're just talking about, then feel free to head to cyberrevolution.com.au. You can leave your details there and someone from the team will be in touch. Thanks for listening.